makers. This is a card that I'm making for the Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous Halloween 2024 release. And for today's card, I'm going to be using the Spooky Spirit CMS 492 stamp set. You can see that it has 6 ghosts on it, but if you look a little closer, you'll notice there are 3 large ghosts and then 3 of the same small ghosts just below. So it's nice that you have ghosts in the different sizes, because you can kind of either make different sized cards with them, or you can, use them on the same card and they're different sizes. So that's a lot of fun. Now I'm going to be making a slimline card, and so I have it cut. It is 8.5 by 3.5, and then I have a 8.25 by 3.25 mat for the front. And then when I open it up, I have an 8.25 by 3.25 mat, because I also have another flap. I cut it 1/2 inch off of an 8.5 by 11 piece of watercolor cardstock, and then I was able to score it at 3.5 and 7, and then I have my trifold slimline card. And the reason that it's trifold is that I am going to be cutting some openings out of each of the flaps. So I'm either going to use squares or circles, and I went way back into my die cutting archives. You can use any framelit dies or nesting dies or whatever you have, and whatever the company calls the types of dies that you have. But these are framelits, and they're from Sizzix from a really long time ago. So these are stitched circles and stitched squares, and the reason that they're called that is because they have some stitching along there. We won't see the stitching today because I'm just using it to cut out the shape, and the stitching will be on the shape that is going to get thrown out, so we won't see that. Now I'm either going to use circles or I'm going to use the squares. So I have kind of started a template like this, and on the front I'm going to cut out the larger one 3 times, or the circle 3 times. I haven't decided which one I'm going to do yet. And then on the inside, I'm going to cut the smaller one out. So once I get the large one cut, I'll then put the smaller one in, figure out where it goes, and then I'll start cutting the smaller ones from the inside flap. And then I'll be stamping the little ghosts on the inside here so that you can see them when you peek through the card all the way from the front. I think that'll be really cute. And so for the front and for the inside flap, I have cut these mats. They will also be cut with the openings as well. And then I'm going to actually stencil on them. So I was going through, because I've been trying to use up paper and things that I already have made, and I was inspired when I saw some that I made several years ago. And so I decided to get out my stencils. And so I have my stencils in 2 sets. So this is my holiday, Christmas, and Halloween set. And then I have like an everyday set. So I got out my Halloween stencils, and I know that we have stencils with this release. So we have the jacks, we have the bones, and then we have the bats. But I wanted something that was going to make a pattern for my mats for my paper here. And so I pulled out, when I pulled out my stencils, so I have this Harlequin with dots, which was some of the paper that inspired me to grab for my stencils. My the shifter polka dots that were released that same year, and these stripes, that shifter stripes that were all, these were all released the same year. And I had so much fun making paper, and I still have some of it, just not enough to make this card. And then I'm going to go ahead and go start cutting all of my openings on my mats and on my card base. And then when I come back, I will start stenciling and stamping, and we'll get this card finished up very quickly. So I'm inviting you to come along and let's start making. I have my die cutting done. So, all right, here I decided to go with the squares, and here's what I did. So I took that template that I had and I laid it on this one. on this side. And you can see I messed up. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to fix that because I had cut almost all of them. And, all right, so using my template, I placed these and then taped them with removable tape and ran them through one at a time. And so I got these 3 all cut. Then I attached my mat that's going to go over this. I attached this by putting it inside and then taping it to the inside with the equal mats all the way around on the inside, so I knew it would fit on the front. And when I had done that, then I just turned it over and it was attached inside. And I laid this back in the squares and I ran it through again and it cut this perfectly. So now I can stencil on it and then attach it to the front. Okay, so that's how I did that one. Then the inside folds like this. So I folded it up like it was supposed to be. And then I laid this in each square. And then to get these correctly placed, I centered them. And then I held them in place like this. And then I would tape them. And then when it was taped, I opened it up and I ran it through my switch. And that's how I cut all 3 of these. Now, where I messed this up was that on the last square, I kid you not, I couldn't believe I did this. On the last square, when I did this, and I still had some tape on this, and I should have taken it off, and that's where I messed up. But I put this in, and then I got this centered, and I held it, and when I opened it, this one stuck there, and I didn't realize it. And so I got this one taped, I opened it back up, and closed this with that die being still stuck there, and so that's why it cut this out, and I couldn't believe it, and I was like, oh, I just couldn't do the whole thing over again. So I temporarily taped it in place with my removable tape, and I'm gonna, when I stamp the ghosts, I'm gonna just stamp them on a piece that will fit in here. That's all I can do. And then on the back, I'm gonna stamp made by, and I'm gonna stamp 1 square just bigger, and it'll just cover this. So I will pull the bigger square, I'll cut it out, and I'll just stick it on there, and I'm going to put my, you know, made by stamp right there. Yeah, that's how I'm covering it up. So remember, I make the mistakes, so you don't have to. So try and pay attention, and remember, don't leave the die cuts where you don't want them. All right, so then I did the same thing for the mat that's going to go on this side. So I centered it on here so that I had the same reveal all the way around. And then once I did, I taped it in place. I closed it. I put this into the little square, taped it, ran it through 3 times. And when I was done, I could pull this out and I have my mat. Okay, so there we go with that. And then I had the extra squares that I cut out of the front, or even this one. And so because I had extra squares, I went ahead and centered this inside of them and cut them out. And I can color them and actually put them on here as little frames. And you'll even be able to see them from here. How cool is that? So I'm going to go ahead and do that also. So I'm going to color these, and I'm going to stencil on both of these mats. And then I'm going to cut my pieces that I have to cover up for here, and then the square for back here. So when we come back, I should have my stencils out, stencils ready to do this. Got to color these. and then we'll start stamping.
I started with the diamond shifter stencil, and so I have it in place over some paper. I don't have the paper on anything that's holding it down, so it's going to shift in a minute. But I'm doing the diamonds in Stormy Sky with a small mini blending tool. And now I'm moving it up and I'm not shifting it yet. So you can see that I'm lining the openings up with the blue diamonds on the bottom. And that's just so that I can get the rest of the blue all the way up to the top of the mat. Now I'm going to shift and use the black soot. So watch. I put the masked diamonds over the blue ones, and the openings are white. And now I'm turning the openings gray by stenciling in lightly with black soot distress ink to make gray diamonds. And I just shifted that over a little bit just because I needed to get diamonds on the far side, because it wasn't going all the way across. And now I moved it down so I can get the bottom of my mat, and there you go.
For the circles, I'm going to do the same thing. Oops. So here I go with I'm going to stick with the same colors. So here I'm going to stencil through the openings, and I'm using the blue and my mini blending, and I'm keeping it purposefully light. I didn't want it to be completely in your face. I wanted it kind of ghostly and light, and so that's why neither of these colors is really dark. So right now this blue that I'm using is Stormy Sky. It's kind of a grayish blue, as you would imagine a stormy sky would be. All right, now I only made it to this far, so I'm going to pull this up and I'm going to line up the circles again. Okay. Then I'm going to hold it. I don't have anything holding the paper down, so I'm just holding it with my fingers. Okay. So I finished the blue. There we go. And now I'm going to shift and switch over to the black soot. So as I take this off, you can see there are the dots. And now I'm going to put the dots under these that are the masked dots. So let's see. And I'm going to have to shift it and then shift it to get all the dots in. That's just kind of the way it works once you start shifting. Okay. Try to make sure I'm lined up. That looks pretty good. Okay. And again, holding it down with my fingers. You could use sticky grid or any of those things, but I just didn't feel like getting mine out. Okay. Let's pick that up. There you can see it. And I'm going to line that back up so I can finish all the way down. Then I'm going to have to shift over one, I think, or maybe not. This might be it. Well, there we go. Now, I have been known to do the double shift. And when I first got this stencil, what I did was I actually shifted it over like that. And if you look, you can see how all of the dots go in between the other dots. And you could do 4 different colors that way. and just have it full, completely full of dots. But since I'm only using 2 colors right now, I think I'm just going to leave it as is. Just lightly polka dotted. I think that's good. All right, so we'll look here. This will go on the inside. I think that looks good. Just enough, not too much. All right. So I will take and I'm going to color these frames. And let's see, I was thinking about spraying them, but I may just keep everything light and not in your face. So I may just go over them, each like this. And I think that might be the best way. Okay, let's look. Yeah, I think that's the best. Okay. So I'm going to do the other 2. I can attach those on there. And then when you see it through, I think that's great. I think that's just enough, right? Okay.
I began to adhere my stenciled mats in place. So I'm putting the inside mat on right now, which is the polka dot one, and I'm going to attach those little frames that I cut from the leftover square pieces from the front mat. And you can see in the middle, while I'm doing that, you can see the big square that I cut out of those same stitched squares to cover up my mistake that I made when I was cutting the mats. And there we have the mats in place. And now I have stamped the ghosts on the piece that's going to go on the inside to cover up my mistake. And you can see I have them so that they're peeking out from different sides and in different ways through those squares. So I have laid the sentiment stamps on them about where I want them to go because I wanted the sentiments to be covered up when it's closed. So I am putting those in place, and now I'm using the grid on my stamp platform to make sure that they're straight. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp each of those sentiments from the Spooky Spirits onto the card under them, and then we'll get to lightly coloring each of those little ghosts. So I'm using Hickory Smoke Distress ink and my water brush, and I just smushed some hickory smoke onto my glass media mat. It's difficult to see, but it's there. And so I'm just dipping my water brush into the ink and slowly painting each of the ghosts just to give them a little bit of color, but not a whole lot. I still wanted them light. Just wanted to give them a little bit of a ghostly appearance. And so now I'm going to glue that down and cover up my mistake, and we're ready to finish.
I've added a few things, so I wanted to tell you what I've done. I took some watercolor cardstock and I put some Stormy Sky on it, and then I stamped from the Halloween Whatnots the word spooky from this one. I stamped it several times, and then I took my scissors and I cut every other letter out really close next to the one that was next to it. And I just went along and I did like that. And then I cut it over next to like that. So I cut that one off and I threw it away. And then I would cut this one next to that letter. And then once I got them all cut out, I just took and did a little bit of a, whatever you call it. I call it a pennant cut. You could call it a, some people call it a fishtail. Anyway, so I did that. And then I did that. And there I had like a little pennant. So I did that for each of the letters in Spooky. And so it took me 2 sets. I stamped 3. It only took me 2. And I cut every other letter so that I could have a little banner that said Spooky for this ghost to hold.
With the finished card, I decided I needed something to hold it together, and so I added a piece of baker's twine to tie it up. And when you untie it and open that first side of the card, you're met with this very cute polka dot page with the 3 frames on it. And it still only gives you a hint as to what these little ghosts are doing or what is going on the inside of the card. Still keeps your interest. And then once you open that final page, you're met with all 3 ghosts and their sentiments and what they're doing. So with this first ghost, I stenciled some of the bats from the mini bats stencil right above that Happy Halloween sentiment, and I only stenciled a couple of them. I just showed you how I made this spooky banner out of the Halloween whatnots, and then I just put that excess thread, I just stuck it down to the inside of the card. And then this last little ghost is holding up one of the jacks from the mini jacks stencil. And that was really all there was to this card. I hope that you found this tutorial helpful. I really wanted to try and show how to make a trifold window card. So I know I didn't show the actual die cutting, but I hope that my explanations helped. If you have any questions about anything that I did in this video tutorial, leave them in the comments or on my blog at playswellwithpaper.blogspot.com. I'll be glad to try and answer to the best of my ability. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I want to wish you a very creative day.